Welcome back to another episode of the RissKy Powerhouse. A long time no speak of. You've been on my YouTube platform. If you guys haven't been tuned into the Twitter spaces that we've been hosting 4 to 5 nights a week, you need to follow me on Twitter. All of that will be in the link will be in the description for my Twitter, my Instagram. We've been active on all platforms. Even if I haven't been getting interviews and episodes out on YouTube, y'all need to lock in for that for sure. It's been a great NBA season thus far. I want to talk about the Western Conference primarily in this video, but when you just look at the overall gist of how the season been going, it's been a lot of competitive nights, a lot of young teams getting better, and all of that. So before we get into all of that, I want to let you all know that on the business side of things, on the back side of things, we've been getting a lot more interviews, scheduled and planned. We have CJ Fair coming in the coming weeks. Brian Taylor, ABA All-Star, ABA champion, coming in the coming weeks. Also, Mark Jackson, NBA vet, drafted to the Golden State Warriors in 2000. They retired in 2009. So we got those things coming in the near future, very near future. So be on the lookout for the RissKy road trip. and yeah, getting back to the NBA, on the NBA side of things, we see the Denver Nuggets pretty much have had a lot on the Western Conference for the majority of the season. Nikola Jokic playing at an MVP level, battling out with Embiid and Giannis to close out, pretty much to see who get that best record and make their strongest push to be the MVP this season. It's crazy to see Jokic making a push for that third one in a row, but we know the trials and tribulations that come with that in terms of not having that championship pedigree and getting that award ahead of that. Usually when you look in the course of the NBA, the only players that have done that is Wilt, Bill, and Bird, and all three of those players won championships within that first or second MVP, and then they got the third one after they already secured the chip. So I'm not saying that that's exactly what Jokic has to do. He's statistically been polarizing this season, pretty much averaging a triple-double for the majority of the season, shooting 60+% from the field. But when you look at players like Embiid and Giannis, they've been making the case out in the Eastern Conference for themselves as well. And Tatum as well, got to put him in there just because of the Boston Celtics' success this season on his back. And also, when you look at how close the West is, though, outside of the MVP race, that West is much more deep in terms of how much talent each and every team possess in terms of who have a chance to win on any given night. I think seeds 5 through 12 is separated by 2.5 games, 3 games. You look at the Lakers making the deadline deal. Although LeBron have been out, the Lakers been running wild as of late, getting wins and making a push. I think they're sitting in the 8th seed right now with Portland falling back, Utah falling from grace, and with Dallas now sitting at 11th seed. That play-in is going to be tight. It's all one game between 8th and 11th. Either one loss or one win. So when you look at the conference, it's really hard to give a clear depiction on which team can win the conference in the playoffs. Who's going to win 3 rounds to get to the finals? Because all of the teams that's on the top, they have glaring holes. When you look at the Denver Nuggets and their paint defense, their interior defense is a big hole because Jokic is going to play the most amount of minutes, and his pick and roll defense is a liability in terms of if you have the personnel that can get to the rim and create shots for others. Jokic in the pick and roll can be exploited. When you look at the Memphis Grizzlies, you have John Morant, that high-end talent, but not having Steven Adams, Brandon Clark going out with an Achilles injury for the rest of the season. So when you look at their interior, it's going to be pretty thin with Santi Aldama, Jaren Jackson Jr., Xavier Tillman. You kind of got to go. You have to go with what you have. The Sacramento Kings and the Memphis Grizzlies have been consistent teams all season, winning games by large margins. Shout out to the Memphis Grizzlies last night. Ja's second game. It's good to see Ja back out there. I think he came off the bench, but 18 points, 8 assists in 18 minutes. That's a hell of a game. When you look at Ja, the off the court issues, you got to make better decisions. I'm not going to talk too much about that, but on that floor is undeniable, and what he does for the team. Luke Kennard hitting 10 threes. The only one he missed was a heave at the end of the quarter. When you look at players like that being activated, that's because of the playmaking that Ja provide coming off the bench with him. Now, obviously, Ja's going to be inserted into the starting lineup soon, so how they transfer those minutes and get that production, still get that same production out of the role players. That's to be seen. But it's good to see Jaren Jackson Jr. playing at a higher level, averaging about 23, 24 points, 8 or 9 rebounds, still giving you the steal, the 2.5 blocks a game over the last 7, 8 games. In the month of March, I think he's averaging like 22, 6.5 boards, 2 assists, a steal, and 2.5 blocks. So if he could take that next step and make those strides towards being a 20 and 10 power forward, as well as giving you the first team all defensive effort every night, along with Desmond Bane giving you 22 a night, along with John Morant being that MVP candidate type of player, the Memphis Grizzlies have a bright future. But that's to be seen with their interior in terms of Steven Adams being out and Brandon Clark, their backup center. With the Kings, they play no defense. Their offense have been nuclear all season. Keegan Murray, great rookie selection and playing the stretch forward position. Harrison Barnes being that vet for them. Sabonis playing at the MVP level. De'Aaron Fox playing at the MVP level. One or maybe both of those guys are going to be all NBA players this year. But the team plays no defense. And any team that can't get 4, 5, 6, 7 stops in a row in a playoff scenario, those are usually the teams that get bounced, because you got to get stops. You have to get stops because the defense is just as important as the offense. Yeah, you can score 130, but when you have that game when the shot's not falling and the ref not giving you the whistle, how can you win outside of that? And that's the biggest thing with a team like the Kings that's so young, and this is their first time. This is their first rodeo. This is their first time actually being good in like 20 years. So that's to be seen as well with the Kings. When you look at the Suns, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Suns waiting on KD. I think KD is supposed to be coming back at the end of March. So that's to be seen. When you look at the Warriors, they play no defense as well. They haven't had Andrew Wiggins. They're still waiting on Gary Payton II to come off their bench, help on defense. But their defense is bad, and they're missing a wing defender. And when you look at Wiggins coming back, that's not going to change the deficiencies of size that they have. The lack of rebounding with Draymond and Looney being the only real. They play JaMychal Green, but he's more of a forward. He's not a 5. They need a player that can stabilize the paint for them off the bench, and they don't have it. So that's going to be a big hole. When you look at the Clippers, Paul George just went down. But even before then, they were playing that. Get 2 wins for every 1 loss, get 1 loss for every 2 wins. Like they was going back and forth, hovering around that 500 margin. They made the big deals at the deadline. Bought in Eric Gordon, bought in Bones Howland, bought in Mason Plumlee, and they made some changes to add some depth. But when you look at how the team been playing, and then Paul George goes down, who knows what would have happened in a playoff scenario without Paul? You know what I mean? So to make a deep run, you need to be healthy, and this is the worst time to kind of deal with a bad injury. You look at a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves sitting in the 6 or the 7. I think they're sitting in the 7th seed right now. Anthony Edwards, he held down the fort as long as he could. He made strides towards being that number 1 option player. In about 14, 15 games coming out of the All-Star break, he was averaging like 25, 5 or 6 rebounds, 4 or 5 assists. But he was also averaging a steal, almost 2 steals, and a block. He was playing way better defense. Players like McDaniels, Kyle Anderson, Rudy Gobert, they bring a different mentality in terms of how the team is structured defensively. When you look at the Minnesota Timberwolves last year, they was a top offense but a bottom defense. And, they got in the 6th, 7th seed and, they made the playoffs and they gave Memphis a little run. But when you look at having a sustainable defense with the wing depth with Taurean Prince, Anthony Edwards, McDaniels, Kyle Anderson, and so forth and so on, the guys off the bench, that can be a new identity for them. Karl Anthony Towns came back, sealed the game. I think he had like 22 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He came back and played a solid game and won the game for them at the free throw line. He was pretty excited in the post-game press conference. But when you just look at where Minnesota can go moving forward, can Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards coexist? When you look at the era of Karl Anthony Towns, that regime is kind of flipped. The team is totally different in the way that they were playing when they were fighting for a 6 and a 5 seed, coming out of the All-Star break. Can that team be that same team defensively with Karl Anthony Towns playing major minutes? I think this offseason, they can get a deal done with Car at a value before Karl Anthony Towns super max extension kicks in. I think they can get a deal done at a $38 million value or something like that. I'm not sure if they explore a trade for Karl Anthony Towns at this point. But if it were me, I would go and look for a young point guard that can come and transition Mike Conley into my backup. Even if it goes into next season where Conley is starting, but we eventually, shift it. I would look for that player, whether that's a Dyson Daniels type of player that's on the bench in New Orleans, or if that's a Trey Mann that's in OKC, and OKC have a lot of veterans. I mean, they have a lot of young contracts, so they might have, and they have a lot of future draft picks, so they might have to, get rid of some of those young players that they have that's not solidified in the rotation, so they can open up space for those future picks to improve the team. So you never know. I'll look for that starting point guard if I were Minnesota, and maybe a wing to come off the bench, or maybe a backup big. We got Naj Reid. I'll probably looking at re-signing him. Gobert is my starter with Anthony Edwards at the 2. We figure out the point guard position, and then we got wing depth with McDaniels, with Taurean Prince, with Kyle Anderson. I try to hold on to those role players. So Minnesota, they got some decisions to make this summer. OKC, I just talked about them a little bit, but OKC have been balling. I don't think Jalen Williams is the rookie of the year, but he's my favorite rookie this year. Paolo is going to win the award because of what he's doing out there in Orlando, but Jalen Williams is one of those rookies that I love to see coming out of Santa Clara. Wing, play the 2 guard, the small forward, 6'6", 215, 210-ish. He can get it off the dribble. He can pass, rebound, defend, bring size, bring experience. He have a polished game. He kind of look more experienced than a rookie. And when you have a player that can come in and immediately give you 10 to 13 points as a rookie, and then you deal with major injury with Shai Gilgeous going out for a few games. You deal with moving Mike Muscala in the trade deadline. You trying to figure out the rotation and all, and you give him a bigger responsibility. Over the last 9 games or so, I think he's averaging like 19 points, 7 rebounds, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and he's still giving you over 2 steals. And when you look at a player like that, his ceiling is high. I don't believe that when you draft a player that did 2, maybe 3 years in college, that shows a high floor and a high ceiling. I disagree with that premise. I think players can still get better. And when you look at a player like Williams, alongside a 6'6" Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a 6'8" Josh Giddey, and he's 6'6" himself, that's a trio that can play the 1, the 2, and the 3, and they can all interchange at any point in time in the game. That's a high advantage that a lot of teams don't have. We see out in Boston, and I'm kind of forecasting a little, but we see with Tatum and Brown, those 2 dudes can play the 2, the 3, and the 4. Brown really can't play the 4, but you get what I'm saying. They can play the wing, but they can go back and forth, and if you need one on to play the point position for a little bit, they can figure it out because of their versatility and their size. When you look at OKC, I think they have 3 of those guys. Not saying that either one can be as good as, Shai Gilgeous might be rivaling Tatum this season in terms of how good they could be and where they are currently. So when you look at between Giddey and Williams, if they could take that next step to being those 20-point scorers next year, not both, but either one, you're depending on the role that the coach decide. With Chet Holmgren coming into the regime as a seasoned rookie, he didn't play this season, but learning the playbook, getting healthy, getting your body right, and then getting your game right, polishing your shot, polishing your play, finding where you're going to get the ball within the team and polishing those spots under the coaching staff that OKC is. I expect Chet to come out next year and play the Jaren Jackson Jr. role, the Bol role, a little bit of Larry Marketing. Larry not as good defensively as a shot blocker, but you get what I'm saying, the power forward role that, roams, and he can get a lot of block shots, hit some threes, put it on the floor, get to the rim, make some plays. And I think Chet Holmgren might come out next year, average about 13 or 14 points, 7 or 8 rebounds, 2 or 3, maybe 4 assists, and he give you a steal and maybe 2 or 3 blocks. And I think that'll be a successful season for him and for the team. When you look at Josh Giddey right now averaging 16 points, 7 rebounds, 8 rebounds, 6 or 7 assists. Williams averaging 15 points, 5 rebounds, 4 or 5 assists. You look at Shai Gilgeous giving you 30 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal, and a block. shooting. They all efficient from the field. They all, they don't play within the liability of what they do wrong. So like, if they're not a good shooter, we're not gonna shoot a lot of shots. If I'm not gonna keep trying to shoot a three if I'm a 29% shooter. I'm not gonna put up 4 or 5 a game. I'm gonna take one, maybe two, to keep it honest. But I'm gonna play within what I do well, and I'm gonna help the team within my strengths. And for young players, for them to have the youngest team in the league, I'm standing on OKC a lot because I think their future is the brightest in the league, considering they have 2 picks this draft. They have 3 picks next draft. So that means the players like Trey Mann, Isaiah Joe, Pokuševski, Ojman Jiang, all of these young players, Jalen Williams, the other Jalen Williams out of Arkansas, the power forward center, all of those players, they're either going to get flipped into other teams where they can come and play a role, or they're going to prove themselves next year and lock in their spot within the rotation. But when you look at having the Houston Rockets pick next year, if OKC have the Houston's pick next year, they can go and win 50 games and still add a top 5 pick to their team. So if I'm them, I'm looking to make a trade. I'm looking to move some of those picks, hold on to that Houston pick as much as I can, and move maybe 4 or 5 picks. Trey Mann, Pokuševski, maybe Lou Dort, because Lou Dort is a 2, sometimes a 3, but he's kind of caught in the middle because you got Gideon Williams now. They're high ceiling players that bring offense and defense. So when you look at a Lou Dort and he's the only player that's making 15 plus million on the team, you have to take Lou Dort, attach him to 2 young players with 3, 4, maybe 5 picks, and you can go and get a Pascal Siakam. You can go make a move for a player like that that's 6'9", 6'10", can come and give you 20 points. Williams will still get you the same 15 if you add a talent like that. Giddey might not take a progression forward in terms of being a 20-point scorer, but in terms of his rebounds and assists, they'll be more efficient players. I think the team will still run through Shai Gilgeous. I do not think Pascal will come to a team like that and do the same thing he's doing in Toronto right now. 25 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't be the primary playmaker. He'd be probably the tertiary playmaker, but he'll be the second scorer, and he'll bring versatility on defense at 6'9", 6'10", blocking shots, getting in the passing lanes, guarding players in the Western Conference like Kawhi, guarding players in the Western Conference like LeBron on switches. Kevin Durant is now in the Western Conference. So how do you adjust to that if you're the OKC Thunder and you're trying to take a step forward? You're going to get a player like Pascal. So now you have a lineup with 6'6" Shai, 6'8" Giddey, 6'6" Williams, 6'10" Pascal, and you got 7'1" Chet Holmgren. And then now you got to fill out your bench with 3 or 4 solid, maybe 2 young players, 3 young players. You go get you another veteran, and boom, we talking. And they got a lot of ways they can do it. But I'm interested to see what OKC do moving forward. When you look at another team like the Pelicans, it's all on the back of Zion Williamson, and if I'm media and if I'm involved in the league, if it was my option, I would not continue to reward a player like Zion Williamson. Not because of his talent, but you don't deserve national media coverage if you're not dependable. The biggest part of it is being dependable. And it seemed like every season he's going to give you a half season, and he's going to go down. And once he go down, that's it. He had a hamstring injury, and we know how those linger. When we look at his body stature and the way he plays, everybody on the court knows he's going to the rim, and nobody can stop it. But the way that, going up and coming down, I don't want to harp too much on his injury, but they were in the top 2 seed for the first 25 games this year. And Zion was playing well, CJ was playing well, Larry Nance was defending, Herb Jones was defending, Trey Murphy was hitting threes, Alvarado. They had a good rotation, and it seemed like they had a promise. It seemed like this season was going to be promising. They had injuries to guys like Herb Jones, Alvarado, Larry Nance. Zion went down. Brandon Ingram comes back to a team that's trying to figure it out, and they've been one of the worst teams in basketball since the new year started. And it's just hard. It's hard to put words behind how I feel about the New Orleans Pelicans. It's never going to be right until Brandon Ingram can stay healthy, Zion can stay healthy. But how many years do you invest in that? You traded for CJ, you've extended him. You paid Zion, you paid Ingram, you traded for Larry Nance. You have Trey Murphy contract coming up soon, Herb Jones contract. So when you look at how the team timeline is structured, they need to win like this year, next year, the year after. They got to start gearing towards that. And just because you gear towards it now, that don't mean you're gonna win now. We see with the Kings, they're gearing and they're figuring out, okay, what are our flaws at this level? We knew what our flaws was at the bottom level to get to a playoff status. Now we had a playoff status. How we take that next step? And that's a couple of years process. I'm not saying the Kings gonna lose it this year. They have a chance to prove everybody wrong. But the chances are, this is a building block. So when is New Orleans gonna have that building block season? I don't know. Portland, I don't want to talk about it, man. They got to trade Dame and move forward, with the picks that they can accumulate and rebuild the team. But it's not gonna happen because he want to stay. So as long as he want to stay, they got to structure the team around that 50-something, 60-something $million contract. And as long as, he's there, the team is going to be, in the middle. And right now they're out of the playoffs. They're the 13th seed. It's not much to be said about them. The Utah Jazz, Danny Ainge must be applauded, man. And Will Hardy, the coach as well. The trade for Donovan Mitchell, the trade of Rudy Gobert have really propelled their team into heights into a future that's very bright. You still have Jordan Clarkson, who you can move this at the draft, or you can move him in free agency and get back the assets for him down the line. Maybe another role player, aspiring contract, maybe a young player. You have Jordan Clarkson, but the players that I like to focus on are the players that I see being there 3, maybe 4, 5, 6 years from now. The core players, like I mentioned with OKC. Utah have Lowry marketing for the next 3 or 4 years at a contract that's under $20 million a year, and he's playing at an all-star level. That's a steal. Abaji, young player, 6'5", 6'6", 2 guard, small forward, I think. He plays the wing position. He's coming off the bench, but he started a couple games and he went off. He had 27 points in the game where they sat all of the veterans, and he's showing that he's going to deserve those minutes next year as a young player up and coming in the NBA. Walker Kessler, 8 points, 8 rebounds, 2.5 blocks, plays the center position to a T, getting 2 or 3 offensive rebounds a game, finishing at the rim, left hand, right hand dunks. And he also rotates faster than a lot of people give him credit for. He moves a lot faster than people think. Walker Kessler is like that perfect big, in my opinion. He's somebody that OKC should trade. I got 3 picks for him right now. Okay, you don't want the 3? Okay, I'll give you that Houston Rockets pick straight up for Walker Kessler right now. Like, that's the type of player he is to me. If you put a player like Walker Kessler beside Chet Holmgren and you run with those 3 guys that I mentioned earlier, and that's a perfect young core that's going to win games now and moving forward. And everybody have their role, know their role. The contract's going to be perfect. You're not going to have to argue. Shea going to get the money. Giddey going to get the second. Now Williams or Chet, that's gonna be the friction contractually. But Walker Kessler gonna get his smooth 20, 25 million, and he not gonna get 40 million. Everybody not gonna get the highest. But we'll see how that goes in Utah moving forward. But we know Danny Ainge, he stockpiled the picks. Now it's about drafting the team. He gonna draft the big team. He draft his teams like that Celtics team that he played on. A big forward, a true center. And a scoring small forward that plays defense. He like his scoring coming from the 2 to 3 and the 4, and he's gonna put a defensive big and a big defensive guard like Marcus Smart. It's gonna look just like Marcus Smart, Brown, Tatum, Horford, Robert Williams. It's gonna look something like that. So that's what I see from the Utah Jazz. If I left anybody out, I spoke on the Warriors, spoke on the Jazz, the Thunder. The Lakers, I don't want to speak too much on them. They got to win games and wait till LeBron come back. It's a big Phoenix Suns, same thing. Wait till KD come back, and they just got to hold the fort until then. But yeah, man, I just wanted to come show my face again. I'm on a new schedule now, work schedule wise, outside of this. So hopefully we can get to y'all once a week now on the weekends and try to get that locked in consistently. Like I said, in the coming weeks. I got my travel going to Baltimore, going to Philly, and going to Jersey to get those deals done. Shout out to to Coach Hamlet at Penn State. Out there, won national championship. You know what I mean? This is second national championship in 3 years, so I got to get out there to Penn State and get that interview done as well. So you know what I mean? Y'all lock in to the RissKy Powerhouse on Instagram, on Twitter, so y'all can get all those updates on when I get those interviews done. But yeah, man, y'all lock into the social media so y'all can get the updates on all the drops for when I travel to those interviews. You can see the behind the scenes on Instagram. You know when I'm going and you know when I'm meeting up with these NBA players, WNBA players, coaches, etc., etc. So yeah, man, it's the RissKy Powerhouse.